My wife and I were decorating a new house, and we found that although the house looked lovely, that there was nothing on the shelves, nothing in the cupboards, and everything was bare and didn't look lived in. And we felt we couldn't buy a carload of knickknacks because it isn't you. So we thought, what should we put on the desks and on the tables and in the cupboards? And my wife, who's very artistic, suggested pre-Columbian art for our basement, and I suggested yellow porcelain for the living room.
I think we started basically just decorating the house, and George certainly was the one that suggested ceramics in the sense of the porcelain. I at that time suggested pre-Columbian for the basement area, and it was actually George that suggested that we collect some china, as he said in those days, for the living room. But I think it was after we got into it that I instigated the expansion of the collection into other areas more quickly than he did. I went to the Christie's course in England, was exposed there to a lot more things that I didn't even know had existed before. And the first thing I got very excited about was the Italian maiolica. And shortly after the commencement of the course, we were taken to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and I saw Italian maiolica for the first time and absolutely just went crazy over it. So I took George by the hand a couple of weeks later and dragged him into the V&A and said, "Look at what I have found," and we started collecting Italian maiolica. I like things that you can touch, and one of the reasons I think I like porcelain is because you can touch it, you can pick it up and feel it, and to me that's a very important part of studying ceramics.
In the history of investments in relation to inflation, the best hedge would have been number one, Chinese ceramics, number two, European ceramics, and way down the list are stocks and bonds and gold and silver and real estate and other things. So as an investor, being in business, I decided to put a certain percentage of my assets into porcelain. And as a result, of course, we filled this house. It was under the beds and in the cupboards and on the floor and everywhere in the basement. And I felt that I had access to more knowledge that other business people did, and I was buying porcelain like someone else might be accumulating real estate.
Oh, I think that really was just almost an accident that it was picked because of the yellow color. Of course, Meissen was the only factory that really produced much yellow. So once George said we should have some yellow china, we started collecting Meissen without realizing really why it was always Meissen. In fact, we started to wonder why it was always Meissen, and then found out that not many factories were able to produce that yellow. So the yellow color dictated the start of Meissen. That was, to me, the breakthrough piece in our collection, because up to that point of time we had been collecting some cups and saucers and a few little, and of course we were collecting Harlequin figures because of George's interest in Harlequin. But we really hadn't made a significant major purchase before that set. And when we saw that, it took several days for George to really decide to bite the bullet and go for that set. And that was a real breakthrough point with us. I think any collector goes through stages, and you start collecting at one level, and then there is always something that jars you up to the next level. And that really, that set was pivotal in our collecting. One course that I love is the Chanty Magot, who was here on this mantle, and I miss him. I missed it terribly for a long time after it went to the museum. It just looked like there was a hole there that nothing else was going to fill. I thought he was really quite incredible.
My favorite piece is a Dupaquier piece. It's the one that is the wall vase, and I think that's very beautifully done and unusual.
I think the vision changed through my husband. I did not see it ever as being, I never ever thought there would be a museum. I always thought it was strictly a matter of collecting. I did get to a point where I started to realize that we had so many things and so many wonderful things that it really was a shame that we couldn't even have them all out ourselves.
I thought, having amassed this amount of porcelain and the quality of it, and of course, buying it for an investment, you only wanted the very top quality. I saw this as an opportunity to do something for my country, for Ontario and for my city, something culturally instead of charitably.
When he first thought of the museum and talked to me about it, I was really quite horror-struck and just thought, well, we just can't give all this wonderful stuff away. What's going to be around the house? And I was not keen at all on opening a museum because I didn't want to lose all these wonderful pieces that I enjoyed having around. So he had to sell me on it.
I first had to find a site. And so what eventually happened is my friend Murray Ross, who was president of York University, had, of course, originally come from the University of Toronto. And he said, George, the site for your museum is right across the road there where Victoria has its tennis courts. And I said, you gotta be kidding. And he said, I don't be so sure that you can't get it. So Murray Ross and I went to see the President of Victoria. And we negotiated a 99-year lease from Victoria and built the museum.